What's going on, everyone in Lukman Nation? Oops, let me turn off my music. Oops, sorry about that. Hey, you all. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm in this dark room again, in the dark corner of Lukman Nation. But I'm so glad that you all have joined us for People's Power Lunch in Lukman Nation with me, Jackie Lukman, People's Prophetess. So pull up a chair somewhere in the cafeteria, grab your lunch, make sure everything is all heated up and you're all comfortable, and find your friends as you pile into the cafeteria. What's going on, Comrade P? Alex Marquez. Alex says you are feeling Baba more today. Maybe he's around. I think he is. Thank you so much for that. PNBC 1310. Big up, you're finally on time. Thank you for being on time and even watching. Latif, aka Colossus Mochis, what's going on? Good afternoon, y'all. Jay Kazuya, thank you. I'm glad you like the title of the video. I hope I will not disappoint with the content. Ready Revolutionary, Dorian Sapiens, Deborah Rodriguez, Monty Now, what's going on? Lisa Catlett, Leah Boggs. I see that you all have joined. Sean M. Eugene Mason, Cynthia Rose. Thanks, y'all, for hanging out with me for this People's Power Lunch in Lukman Nation. Listen, if you're watching on Black Power Media, please subscribe to Black Power Media. You can also support Black Power Media on Patreon, patreon.com/Black Power Media. There is some extra patron only content there. You can also support Lukman Nation on Patreon, patreon.com/Lukman Nation, where it is time for a patrons only stream for this month. Yes, I think it is. I see a few more folks have come on into the lunchroom. Chris Bernadelle, Sugar Booger 7, Ricky Ryan, Peace Africans. And I apologize for this bad lighting. I'm in the Sputnik studios and we don't have a whole lot of extra space for that are not shows. So this is one of the small conference rooms, and yeah, one of the overhead lights is out, so it's a little dark and mood lighty in here. So I apologize for that, but we're gonna make it do what it do. All right, y'all. Whoo. Yes, Jay Kazua, the Global South, the Global South, and people around the world are usually way ahead of the U.S. Or at least have been since the Cold War in regard to people's struggles because they've been the targets of U.S. imperialism and Western imperialism. So they've had to fight against it, where we, inside the beating heart of imperialism, have been bombarded with endless, ceaseless pro imperialist propaganda, propping up the US as good and everyone else in the world as everyone else in the world that's not capitalist and a friend to the US as bad. So, yeah, we talked about Sri Lanka and the protests there on By Any Means Necessary, talked about it a bit on Black Power Media, the Remix Morning Show. Very important developments, but just the first steps. We need to keep an eye on what's going on there. Appreciate you bringing that up. Pamela Jones, what's going on? Devin Dean, how are you? Good to see you. All right. So yes, y'all, I just want to let you know that according to Jill Biden, it's so wonderful that Hispanic people, their word, not mine, are diverse because of bodegas and breakfast tacos. Jill Biden said, let me see if this will play. Probably going to get an ad first. Sorry. Sorry, yes, get the stupid ad first. So let me mute the ad before this, and I should have queued this up before we got started, but hopefully this will give you all a little bit of time to heat your lunch up. Here we go.
Referring to Latinos. Of this community, as distinct as the Bogotas of the Bronx, as beautiful as the blossoms of Miami, and as unique as the breakfast tacos here in San Antonio.
This heifer right here. First of all, first of all, she said Bogotas. Please explain to me what the hell is a Bogota? I don't. I thought for all my whole life, I thought it was a bodega. That's what I thought. That's what I heard people calling them, bodegas. I don't know what a Bogota is. I'm not sure what the. But the fact that she compared people in the Chicano Latinx community as diverse as whatever Bogotas are, and breakfast tacos. Oh, Lord Jesus. So I think Jill and her gaffe faux pas, that wasn't a gaffe. She meant that. She wrote that ahead of time. That was whoever, she or whomever wrote that ahead of time. That wasn't like an off the cuff thing. That was, she meant that. Like comparing people to the diversity of food. And breakfast tacos. Oh boy. I think that Jill Biden's comments are indicative of the kind of people the Bidens really are, always have been, what really goes on in their heads, and how they really do see people who are not like them, wasps. And I think her comments give insight, as if you needed more insight into old Jim Crow Joe, gives more insight into how they think of us in general. They can't conceive of describing us as human beings in a way that reflects human characteristics. They have to compare us to food that actually Chicano people ain't create breakfast. What are breakfast tacos? What the fuck? Oh, I can't. Anyway, I just thought that was, yes. I mean, I guess we're as diverse, we Africans or African Americans, as many of us are still prone to call ourselves, are, I guess we're as diverse as, like, I don't know what, collard greens and black eyed peas, I suppose. Um, I love both, but mm, mm. Anyway, yeah, that's just, I just thought that was amusing in the most cringe-worthy, horrific, disgusting, but typically low-key liberal racist kind of way. Because that's really what that is, a reflection of, that you can't think of a way to describe human beings in a way other than relating them to some food that white people actually co-opted and made a thing. Y'all stop. Throw that woman and her Jim Crow ass husband away. Okay. In more serious news, we talked Tuesday, I'm sorry, on Black Power Media about this case in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in which the police chased, they claim, a suspect and a teen who was not related to what they claimed. They were chasing this suspect into a house, into threw a couple flashbang grenades, literal grenades. You can call them flashbang if you want to. It's a grenade. They blow things up, they explode. And that's what happened with the house. The house was burned to the ground, and the person they were chasing on alleged warrants escaped, but the 15-year-old died in the fire. Well, here are some interesting developments about that story. That's not interesting, but typical cop bullshit. The APD was mistaken about the federal warrant that they claimed they had for the man that they were targeting in the SWAT raid. Let me make sure that this is big enough for you all to see. This is reported by Source NM, an Albuquerque publication, I believe. And they report that in the days following a deadly SWAT raid on a house that burned down in Albuquerque's International District, police and local media repeatedly said that the man they were trying to arrest that night was wanted on a federal warrant. And remember, we reported that's what the police said. The reason that they were chasing the person, that there were warrants, that it was parole violation. We said that because that's what the news reported. How about the next morning? And actually, the next morning after the incident, Police Chief Harold Medina of the Albuquerque Police said at a news conference that the department's Investigative Support Unit, or ISU, was searching for Queant Kelly because he had some felony warrants, one from the state level, one from the federal level. Then he said in the same news conference that they had found 2 active warrants for Kelly in an internal police database, one for federal parole violation for carjacking, and another for unlawful taking of a motor vehicle out of the city of Santa Fe. But over the next few days, local media, including the Albuquerque Journal, local station KRQE and KOB, even though they repeatedly repeated this false information, the truth is that a search of federal court records over the past month that was done by this outlet, Source New Mexico, actually shows no federal warrants were issued against Kelly or any property associated with him. There were no federal warrants for Kelly in New Mexico when SWAT was called out to the house where Kelly was visiting on July 6th. A spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney's Office said just this Tuesday, just yesterday, in the District of New Mexico, there were no federal warrants at that time. A spokesperson for the New Mexico District Office said. On Monday, the Journal, again citing police, reported that Kelly was wanted on felony warrants. That was also not true. In reality, the New Mexico Corrections Department Probation and Parole Division Director Melanie Martinez on March 21st signed a warrant for Kelly's arrest, saying he violated 5 conditions of his parole. Here's the thing, y'all. A parole violation in and of itself is not a felony, and it is not supposed to be handled by a criminal court. It's supposed to be handled by state probation and parole. Kelly, he completed his sentence for a 2018 carjacking conviction that occurred in 2018. So how did the Albuquerque Police Department get issued an arrest warrant that was carried out by a SWAT team that ultimately led to the death of 15-year-old Brett Rosenau? How? When this should have been handled by probation and parole at the state level. And it's this kind of stuff, bullshit, chicanery, that repeatedly happens, that continues to fuel the justified rage at policing as it exists in this country. The Albuquerque Police Department have of course, not really responded to requests for a comment. They've said that there is an ongoing investigation by Albuquerque Police Department at a federal law enforcement agency that could result in charges. Oh, no, they won't. No, they won't. There will be no charges that will be filed, that will come of anything, if there are any charges that are filed against anybody in the Albuquerque Police Department or anybody in the Albuquerque Parole and Probation Division for carrying out a search warrant and directing a SWAT team to track down someone for something that was not a federal offense, something that nobody in the parole, maybe that parole officer might lose her job. That might be what happened. She might be forced to fall on her sword, the one who filed the initial violations for Kelly. But the Albuquerque Police Department, nobody is going to be held accountable. There ain't gonna be no charges for anybody in the Albuquerque Police Department for killing 15-year-old Brett Rosenau, for destroying that family's home, for that illegal pursuit of Queant Kelly. Nobody's going to be held accountable for that. And this is why we say fuck 12. This is why we say fuck the police. Not some bad apples in the police, not a few bad actors in the police. No, the entire institution, because this is not one person sitting in the Albuquerque Police Department office looking at a computer saying, oh, there's somebody who wants a warrant taken out on this person. And I alone by myself, I don't see any federal warrants against this person, but I alone by myself am going to decide to deploy the SWAT team to go after this person because this other person, this one sole person in the Department of Probations and Parole said that they violated their parole. No, what about the person in the Office of Probation and Parole who signed off on whatever that parole officer reported? Okay, fine, he violated the parole, but why did the Office of Parole and Probation not respond to that report? How did that information get to the APD? How was a federal warrant issued for a SWAT team to be mobilized? That's not one person. That's not a few bad apples. That's the whole damned system working exactly as it's designed to unleash the full weight of the system on the people who are repeatedly, as we have seen throughout history, the targets of the people. People who look like you, me, Black, Brown, Latinx, Chicano, Indigenous people, poor folks. Yes. This is why we say, fuck the police. This is also why we say we demand community control over the police and all of the institutions in our communities. Because the people who are involved in these existing institutions, they are not only, it's not just that they're not from our communities. We can't leave the discussion there because we don't want a bunch of cops living in our communities. They have no social ties. They have no spiritual ties, I guess. They have no allegiance or solidarity with the people in the communities that they are targeting, that their policies are affecting. Their sole purpose is to keep our communities in particular exactly how they are, exactly where they are, and far away from those other communities that benefit from capitalism, imperialism, and the oppression of our communities. So when we say community control over police and the institutions in our communities, we are talking about building up our communities from the inside, from the ground up, and building up these institutions to provide the services that our people need in our communities so that the state ain't doing this to us. And guess how? Guess how we are going to accomplish that? The only way we are going to accomplish community control over anything in our communities. Guess how, y'all? Organizing. Organize, organize, organize. And that brings me to the January 6th hearings. And of course, throughout, these lunches, um, we are going to talk even more about what community control over our institutions look like, how we can organize to bring that about. How do we go from individually being in communities, like physically living where we live, to developing an organizational base with the people that we live around? How do we have conversations with people to meet their needs, to find out what, their needs are, to find out how we can meet their needs, to find out what we can do to expand meeting the needs of the people that we are physically living around, to expand that to literally mean how can we meet the needs of the people in our wider community? And in the meantime, how do we deal with the political aspects of power? Because when we're talking about organizing in the way I'm talking about, folks, we're talking about building power. That's how we do it. That really is how it is. It is door by door, block by block, person by person. It is struggling over ideas. It is having conversations about people with people about what they understand about this system, how it works, explaining to people how it really works, and then leaving that information with them to come to revolution on their own with the tools and then with the talents that they bring to move us even further, replicating that process person by person, block by block, organization by organization, building up to having public events that are open to the public where we do these kinds of things. All of that. We're going to have more conversations about that. And certainly these conversations are being had and expounded upon and deepening, and we are sharpening our focus in organizations that I belong to, in Pan-African Community Action here in Washington, D.C., right in Southeast D.C., in the Black Alliance for Peace, which issued a very important statement on the ongoing occupation of Haiti, in which even some leftist and otherwise anti-imperialist governments are actually involved in. So I encourage you to go to the Black Alliance for Peace website and check that statement out to learn about the ongoing UN occupation of Haiti, which absolutely directly relates to the kinds of things we need to organize against, to uproot in this country. But when we're talking about organizing, and the kind of organizing that we need to do to achieve community control over the police. And now that I think about it, I think maybe one day I'm going to have Frank Chapman on to talk about that, because they've done some amazing work in Chicago. And um, um, Pan African Community Action is also a member organization of the National Alliance Against Political and Racist Oppression, which Frank Chapman heads, and has done a lot of amazing work in Chicago toward advancing community control of police. I think maybe I might have Frank on. He's a real dope guy. We've had him on by any means necessary. But okay, I digress. But the organizing that I'm talking about we need to do, I'm so glad you said that, Yipper. Yeah, I am guilty of assuming that all of y'all know who the people are that I kind of have been mentored by and look up, but you don't. So okay, cool. I will have Frank Chapman on one of these people's power lunches, so you can learn from an elder who's actually done the work and is still doing the work, what the kind of stuff we're talking about. But okay, so all of this leads me to the January 6th hearing yesterday. If you didn't watch the hearing, and again, y'all, I watched those terrible things, so you don't have to. And I see you all in the comments, Stuart Fishman. Exactly, this is what the Democrats are up to with these hearings. Every election is the most important election of our lifetime. Let me see, go back up to, let's see, who was it? I think it was Nawadi, who said, vote like we've never voted before. That's what the Democratic Party wants us to do. And honestly, folks, when we talk about these January 6th hearings, that is partially what their utility is for the Democratic Party. They're really not interested in actually charging Donald Trump with anything, because if they were, they would have done it already, because they had all, they knew they had all of this information. They had this, they could have done it, but no, they have to make this, they have to present this evidence publicly, basically to make the argument to the American people that they look, this is why you have to vote for the Democrats to stop Donald Trump and his minions from ever being elected to power again. Because look at how terrible they are, all of the stuff that they're presenting, some of it which is pretty interesting. But I mean, the fact that the Democrats haven't done anything about the acolytes of Donald Trump, who are already and continue to be sitting members of Congress, and some federal appointees, even on lifetime appointments to judge appointments, they ain't done nothing about that. So these people. But in the January 6th hearing yesterday, I thought it was interesting. There's always something interesting that they do bring up, but they highlight things that I don't think they mean to highlight things. So I think the point of yesterday's hearing was kind of to connect the right-wing groups involved in January 6th and the individual extremists like, Ali Alexander, Tim Pool, Alex Jones, and others, to having some prior knowledge of Trump's plan to march on the Capitol, right, to stop the certification of the Electoral College votes, which was why that riot happened on January 6th, because apparently there was a pro-Trump rally or protest that was planned for later in December, but the back channel chatter seemed to indicate that people knew that something was going to happen on January 6th. So the plans to have a public pro-Trump protest, anti-Biden protest were moved from December, whatever that date was, to January 6th, especially after Trump tweeted on December 19th of 2020 at 1:42 in the morning, quote, "Big protest in DC on January 6th. Be there, will be wild," right? So before he made that tweet, folks were planning to do stuff later on in December, but he says be in DC on January 6th. For folks are like, okay, cool. The January 6th, we're going. And of course, January 6th is the day that the electoral votes were to be counted and certified. So the clips that were shown in the hearing of people, of these right-wing social media personalities like Alexander and Tim Pool, and who I had actually never heard of Tim Pool before, but Alexander I knew about, and Alex Jones. It seemed like they had inside knowledge, or at least I think the committee was trying to suggest that they maybe had inside knowledge of what was going to happen on January 6th, other than just a protest. Maybe though, those people, when like Tim Pool was, the video they showed of Tim Pool was of him saying, oh, January 6th, red wedding motherfuckers, look out your window, it's going to be a red wedding. And, if the red wedding is a reference to, I think, the Game of Thrones, when there was supposed to be this wedding, this royal wedding that actually turned into a massacre. So that was a very specific reference to violence. But I don't think the committee proved that these people had prior knowledge of the details of the violence. I tend to believe that that's more it's, in my mind, I'm leaning more toward that's what they wanted to happen. That's what these people wanted to happen. I could be wrong. Maybe they did have, detailed knowledge, but here's the thing. I don't even care. I honestly don't. I don't care if they did have detailed knowledge of, plans to carry out violence. I don't care if they received detailed instructions from Trump via FedEx before January 6th. I don't care if Trump visited their homes and laid out the plans and drew maps for them with crayon. I don't care. I don't think that matters so much, because honestly, we all know that Trump incited this riot. He incited this riot. His cabinet, members of his staff admitted to such. They admitted regretting the fact. They admitted that the blood and the violence was on their hands. The Democrats knew all this stuff way back then. And it's ridiculous, this farce of these televised hearings that they're using again to convince the American public of the obvious, but without any certainty of any of the evidence being used to charge or indict and ultimately convict Donald Trump or any of the people involved of anything, really. All they've really done is to use these hearings to make the case for the American people that we need to vote for Democrats in the midterms and in 2024. Vote blue no matter who. This is the most important election in our lifetimes. That's the case the Democrats are making with these hearings, to keep Trump or any of his acolytes again from gaining power again. That's that for the Democrats. That's the sole purpose of these doggone hearings. However, well, not the sole purpose. That's one of the important purposes. I'm gonna get to the other person in a minute. However, what I think they did expose in these hearings unintentionally, at yesterday's hearings, unintentionally, was the level of organization, or the ability of the right to organize the way they did and show up on January 6th, organize the way they did, even in the midst of what looked like chaos to you and me. And I point to the testimony of the two right-wing folks that they had testifying, Jason Van Tadenhove, and Stephen Ayers. Tadenhove was the spokesman for the Oath Keepers for a while. And he said that he spent about 3 years promoting that group before he said he grew concerned with the growing white nationalism and other straight up racists in the group. Now, honestly, I have never known the Oath Keepers to be anything but white nationalist and racist, but hey, it takes what it takes for some people. Okay. And he said he finally left after hearing senior Oath Keepers members deny the Holocaust. Takes what it takes, I said, you know. More importantly, though, I think when Van Tatenhove, that's what his name is, said in his testimony that it would, and this was kind of interesting, and it was funny, that the Oath Keepers and many people in the organization actually agree with him, that the Oath Keepers was really like a vanity project for the leader, Stewart Rhodes, who himself is in jail on seditious conspiracy charges related to January 6th. And he said that Rhodes kind of sees himself as a powerful paramilitary leader, but really is not respected a whole lot in the organization because he doesn't really command a lot of forces. He said that even though that is true, the Oath Keepers is a dangerous organization. Why? Because of their ability to widely disseminate violent messages and radicalize their followers. And he said that the thinly veiled tweet, that wasn't even thinly veiled, the tweet that Trump said to come to Washington on January 6th for the protest gave the nod to Rhodes and the Oath Keepers and groups like it, that it was time for action, right? So the other part of what the testimony revealed yesterday that I thought was interesting was that 3 formerly unrelated right-wing extremist groups, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and the Three Percenters, those groups were not related other than they are white supremacists, they are sexist pigs, and they are violent, but otherwise they had not worked together in any capacity. They worked together to support Donald Trump on January 6th. And they literally, one of the members, Kelly Meggs, I think it was, of the Oath Keepers, tweeted, and there's video of Enrico Tarrio meeting in the parking garage of some hotel here in Washington, D.C. in December with members of the Oath Keepers and the Three Percenters to solidify that unity to come together on January 6th to support Donald Trump. So I'm looking at all of this and I'm listening to these people talk about how these right-wing fascists organized, united to organized. And I thought to myself, how do organizations like these do so well at disseminating information and radicalizing people, even as the information they're disseminating is bullshit and lies, and they are so good at radicalizing hate. And how did they so easily come together to unite around a common goal, to coordinate and carry out what, again, looked to me to be very intricate plans in a very disciplined manner, even in the midst of what looked like the chaos of that riot, to achieve a singular goal, and that was to commit violence and to install their Fuhrer for another presidential term that he actually did not win. Because remember, y'all, if you have seen the video, there is one particular video clip of the riots where people are on the steps going into the Capitol building, but there is literally a line of men in like military fatigues, a lot of equipment, with their hands on each other's shoulders, walking in a straight line, very disciplined, cutting right through that seemingly chaotic crowd of rioters and going into the Capitol building. How did they do that? How did the right become so good at organizing? And to me, I have to tell you, it baffles me that in this country, leftist, working class, indigenous, Black, poor led, and focused movements have been relentlessly attacked and weakened for decades by infiltration, internal divisions being sowed, groups and people being pitted against each other by the state, that then turns around and arrests and imprisons people, while the media apparatus, which is a part of the state, discredits those people and their organizations and the movements, while the right that the same state uses to commit some of that violence against those people and organizations use the organizing tactics from the left that actually made us so successful once that we became a threat to the government. And they have not only used those tactics successfully to do what they did on January 6th, but to almost, I won't say almost succeed, but to have a level of organization and unity of purpose that we saw. And I think this is something that Republicans and pro-cop, pro-military, pro-war Democrats are implicated in, have been, always have been, especially today, as the Democrats are also using these hearings to justify their continued support for giving more money to the police and the military, even as they cry poverty when we on the left are demanding people's programs. And the police and the military and the militarized police will be unleashed on the left, while the Democrats will claim, as Democratic mayors unleash those militarized police forces on the left, while they will claim that, well, we need to give the police and the military more money, and the police need more military equipment because they need to fight the growing fascism. See what we revealed on January 6th, and they'll point to the testimony and all of this stuff from these hearings. But all of that will come. What will come out of that is more money for the police, more militarization for the police, which will be unleashed on the left, and more money for the military, which will continue to be unleashed upon the rest of the world. But the fact that the right has been able to do this and has reached the level of organization that they did, that I think was on display on January 6th, was because, of course, they have always had the support of the state. Always. They've always had the state behind them. And it did not matter if it was a Democratic or a Republican who was in the White House. It did not matter that Congress was controlled by the Democrats. The state has always implemented policies that were fascist all the time. That this is how we end up with political prisoners and an expansion of the prison industrial complex and the establishment and the proliferation of the 1033 program and the expansion of all of these so-called criminal justice or crime task forces coming out of the Department of Justice, like Operation Relentless Pursuit and its progeny, under Democratic leadership in this country, under DOJ heads appointed by Democrats, under secretaries of the Department of Defense. This is why we continue to have imperialist wars under secretaries of the Department of Defense who are appointed by Democrats. And on top of that, they're either Black or gay, or Black and gay, or Black and gay and trans, or Latinx and gay, or Latinx and trans. Do you see what they do? They are all right wing. They are all in support of fascism, domestic and global. And the right wing has always known this. They have always known that Democrats are so very happy to be friends with them and go to what's the name of this restaurant not too far from here that's a big deal among the political class. I can't remember, but it's where all the political folks go to sit down and have lunch. And you will see Republicans sitting down to dinner with, or lunch, dinner and lunch, breakfast sometimes too, with Democrats. It's a couple of places up here like that. The Palm, I think, is one. There's one that's been around for a long, long time, and for the life of me, the name escapes me. Um, you'll see them sitting down having lunch together, dinner together, laughing with each other. Republicans and Democrats, they're always in the media talking about how this one hates people and that one is the enemy and we need to stop each other. And then they go have lunch together and slap each other on the back and laugh and joke and literally laugh at how they are dividing up the money they are making off of denying the people what we need and getting rich off of them. That's always been true. The right has always had the state in this country behind it. So I look at the organization that was apparent, it was obvious on January 6th. If you really took the time to look at some of that footage and to see, I mean, how in the world do you have a riot that's supposedly, chaotic and there's no organization and it just happened and it's just spontaneous? How do you have a large group of people with the ability to literally walk through the middle of an ongoing riot and make their way into anywhere? How do people like that part the waters if we're not talking about a level of organization and unity of purpose that I am really upset that we have not cultivated enough on the left? Even understanding that the left does not have the weight of the state behind us. We've got the weight of the state on us, against us. But wouldn't that suggest, y'all, that we need to be even more committed to organizing and finding a unity of purpose? That's what I think. And this is, I think, the problem that I've seen at least since, I don't know. I can't even put a finger on it because I always think about the labor movement and how the labor movement in the 30s and 40s was uh, very strongly supported and driven by poor uh, Black rural sharecroppers and communists, and how there was poor white and poor Black solidarity in that labor movement, of course, until the state came along with someone who played on deep-seated racial animus, not of Black people toward white people, but of white people toward Black people. And it wouldn't be an issue if it didn't work. This was the downfall, I think, aside from the obvious state repression and the brutal backlash of the state using the police and racist mobs and all that kind of stuff. But also, we have to be honest that it is far too easy to fracture the left by playing on particularly poor white people's racist tendencies. It's too easy if if it weren't effective, it wouldn't have been done, and it wouldn't still be done. And it is still done. What do we have now on the left? What's the argument that we're having now on the left? It's not race, it's class. And yes, you're right. You're right. The left has less money, but look, let's be clear about this. And we are in bigger numbers across all the Americas. That's a great point. We must organize more strategically and be more clear about our purposes. Left in England is right wing, fake leftists everywhere. Absolutely true. We do have left money, but again, when I read Hammer and Hoe and other, and I highly recommend people read Hammer and Hoe and anything from Claudia Jones, everything from Claudia Jones. We need to understand that the people who organized that massive communist movement for labor rights in the South that was multiracial, they didn't have no money either. They didn't have any money. And they organized on the unity of workers' rights for everyone. How did that movement eventually become fractured? Somebody came in and played on the racial sentiments of white people. That you could do better if you did not organize with these Negroes and these and these Mexicans and these immigrants, because they just want to take your stuff. It worked to put a halt, along with the other machinations of the state and the right, to the labor movement then, and it's working again today. We've got folks on the left talking about, well, no, talking about racism, that's not the most important thing. It's class. We have to talk about class first. How about they're inextricably tied? Race and class issues are inextricably tied. You cannot deal with class issues in this country unless you deal with racism. You cannot deal with racism in this country unless you deal with class. They are inextricably tied. But for some reason on the left, we get to fighting over which comes first, which is more important, rather than, you know what? We need to have a unity of struggle here. We need to have a principle of unity to struggle together for people-centered human rights that address the needs of all people, to have a working class, Black, Indigenous, and other people of non-European descent who are oppressed, focused, and led movement that focuses on human rights for all, that particularly lifts up the needs and the issues of the working class and the poor. How the hell hard is that? And I know that's not every single thing, but that sure is a very wide basket that we all fall into. Everything that we are struggling against in our individual silos, everything, that's it. That's everything. But instead, we are fighting over race or class. Race is class versus class. People having arguments for or against Afro-pessimism. Honestly, y'all, can I be honest? I'm not even exactly sure what the hell that is, and I don't even care. I'm so sorry for being unintellectual on that note. I don't care. It's just not that important for me for people to either be for or against Afro-pessimism when I know that in this country, this white supremacist, patriarchal, sexist, capitalist, settler, colonial state that is actively engaged in the brutal repression of people's movements in this country and around the world, and is the leading actor of global imperialism, does not care about people who look like me and people who are of varying shades of non-European descent. But I also know there are people who do look like me who buy right into that America First rhetoric. They see themselves as American. American is their identity. They love capitalism. They're trying to get the bag, and they are happily throwing working class and poor folks who they look like under the bus with bootstrapism and, earn your leisure, invest fest bullshit. Yeah, that's a class issue. Absolutely. But the race issue is real. So I'm looking at the right and the ease, it seems, with which, and I'm not saying that the level of organization that we saw on January 6th happened overnight. It didn't. But I do know they stole our tactics. They stole our organizing tactics while they were infiltrating our organizations. Do y'all think they were just doing that? Do y'all think COINTELPRO existed solely just to destroy leftist organizations? Oh no, they were learning. They were learning how to beat us at our own game. And I think we've seen that with the level of organization. At least that's what I saw. I mean, I could be wrong. And it's cool. People, disagree, cool. But I saw a level of organization on January 6th. And I think these hearings are exposing that, although unintentionally, that proves that the state and the right has literally been learning from the left about how to organize, to build and maintain power. Because no empire, this is the thing, no empire can continue to exist using brute force alone. That doesn't happen. That's it. There has to be a level of bottom up support that keeps empires afloat, that keeps empires going. Thanks, Ricky. This is a great point. Until we're honest about it, about the dishonesty, about the actual material reality of what exists as the left in the U.S. was your previous comment. We'll continue to tell the right who are organized and who organize and they don't even get along. Thank you for bringing that up. Let me hip you to something that I don't think a lot of people realize about the right, and particularly in relation to this issue of religion, which I think people usually mistake as like the one coalescing thing that the right, everybody on the right agrees on. No, they don't. No, they don't. No, people on the right um, actually don't agree on religion. They agree on how to They agree on wanting power. That's what they agree on. And they agree that even the religious people on the right, they agree that their power is ordained by their God. That's the narrative they've created for themselves. They know damn well it's actually not in the Bible. The manifest destiny, not actually in the book. They know that. But they created this narrative to prop up what they were doing. What they agree on is wanting and pursuing and maintaining power. But these groups, like I said, the Three Percenters, the Oath Keepers, and the Proud Boys, they don't agree with each other on much of anything other than white people should have power. That's pretty much it. That is their unity of purpose. They're not like sitting around in a park somewhere, all the white supremacists and white people singing kumbaya, or, having a shared vision of it. No, because pretty soon they'll start to fracture themselves. As, believe it or not, we are seeing in the so-called evangelical church with the new generation of younger folks who have been brought up in that bullshit lie, that absolutely satanic lie, And they're looking at their parents like, what the hell have y'all done? I like Jesus, but I don't like any of y'all. No. The same thing is happening, I think, in groups like the Oath Keepers, where Totenhaven testified yesterday that the members of the organization don't even like their own leader. They think he's an asshole who's just doing all this for his own. So you know what happens when organizations are like that, when there is a leader and they may have a unity of purpose, but nobody likes the leader, it breaks off into a bunch of other little organizations behind other people in the organization. They're not actually unified. They don't like each other. They have a unity of purpose, though. And I know that for those of us on the left, there are some struggles that we must have, and I do believe that in order to carry out this unity of purpose and to really struggle, fight, and win, there are some things, there are some principles of unity that we must agree on, or else we have no use for you. And I think that we do have to exclude some people from among whatever coalition on the left we build to achieve this. I do believe that we all better be anti-imperialist, because there is no way we can win against this country's government domestically and not join the fight of the people around the world who are fighting against the very same government. It's impossible. I think it's impossible. So other people may feel differently, but me personally, I think a principle of unity needs to be that we are anti-imperialist. However, if we can achieve some gains in some way by rocking for a minute or two with some folks who are not necessarily anti-imperialist, who might be able to be brought over to that in that internal struggle, because I think that while we are doing this, internal struggles will have to happen, because see, struggle is not always a bad thing. Struggle is not always a bad thing. Struggle is a good thing when you have unity of purpose and you're struggling toward achieving that unity and realizing that purpose. I don't know. I don't have all the answers, and I'm certainly not kind of sitting here trying to make like I do. I just feel like I am kind of tired of having conversations with people on the left and debates on the left. First of all, I'm sick of debates. I'm tired of debates. I don't understand the draw that people have for all of these public debates on the left. I know they're very popular. I just think people like to see people fighting, and I think that's ridiculous. It's a waste of time, effort, energy, intellect, and brain cells, and that's why I don't do them. I don't care. I don't care. Um, I think now that I'm just kind of randomly thinking about stuff, I think that a principle of unity absolutely needs to be. You can't be dedicated to international solidarity if you are anti-immigration in this country. You can't. So this whole ADOS, FBA, Foundational Black American, you stop that shit. We need to. No, no. I think that's. I don't think we can. I don't think we can achieve what we on the left need to achieve by aligning with people uh, who hate other people who are struggling against the same thing we're struggling against, but who are also carrying the right wing, white supremacist, nationalistic, imperialist line about immigrants. That just fuck no. Mm. I really feel like we need to stop being polite about words. Look at how y'all look at here, y'all. It's scientific socialism or it's not. Stop being scared to say that shit. It's just, I just don't understand why people are like, well, what we want is what? No, what we want is socialism, motherfucker. What we want is socialism. We want socialism that guarantees that people-centered human rights are established, respected, and protected. We want socialism for this country and the rest of the world. And I know how you feel about ADOS, diverse, but I was around when they were created. I saw it happen. So you can't tell me that I don't know what ADOS is about. Oh, yes, I do. I saw it literally be birthed with my own two eyes. I know exactly what Carnell and Tone and those other folks have said. Yeah, okay. So look, I'm just saying, I'm just saying, y'all. I think we, instead of struggling for unity of purpose for what we do want, we struggle and fight over silly things like the religion and what people eat and what people watch, and it's, oh Jesus, stop. We don't have time for that shit. We have got to fight to survive. Not only do we have to fight to survive, but no, diverse. I'm glad you asked this question. What do you mean practice socialism amongst ourselves only? No, it's socialism. It is socialism or destruction for all of us. It's socialism for all of us or destruction for all of us. It's socialism or barbarity. It's socialism or continued imperialism and capitalism and oppression and poverty. It's one or the other. It is no. So either we are going to struggle and fight and win for socialism so everybody can live, or we're going to keep doing what we're doing and hope that we survive what the right builds on the ashes when this empire falls, because they are absolutely organized to take over for whatever is left. My question is, are we? That's my question. I cannot pretend to have all of the answers. I do know that one of the answers is get involved in an organization. You can't organize by yourself. Organizing must be done in organization with other people. So, and there are plenty: the Black Alliance for Peace, Pan-African Community Action, Party for Socialism and Liberation, the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, all of whom there's community movement builders down in Atlanta. There's the FTP movement down in Atlanta. There is all those are just ones I know about personally that I'm either involved in, work with, have a lot of respect for. That's just a few. I guarantee you there's something where you are that you can get connected in. But I'm out of time. I have to go because I have a real job to get to. I really hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you, Yipper Socialist Alternative. That's cool. I'm cool with them. Yeah, I hope you all really enjoyed this People's Power Lunch. I hope it was nutritious and filling, and I hope you'll come back tomorrow, or maybe, I don't know what we'll talk about, but I'll always find something to talk about with you guys. Chew the fat during these People's Power Lunches. I appreciate you all so much for hanging out with me today. As always, be very good to yourselves, each other, and a luta continua. The struggle continues, but Victoria asserta, victory is certain. Peace, y'all.